Hey everyone! So lately the world has been a lot, and if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're definitely not alone. Keeping up with the news is important, but it definitely has this negative impact on mental health. It makes you feel powerless and hopeless, at least that's what I felt, and it made me feel like I need some kind of solace, and I'm guessing many of you do too. It's desperate times. It feels like everything is spiraling. The right wing rising everywhere, the Trump inauguration and everything that he's been doing, affecting the whole world, multi-billionaires gaining power, the climate inaction, which is so frustrating, women's rights being stripped away and no one's doing anything about it. It's hard not to feel like we're heading towards another collapse, or even some voices here and there are whispering the word war or a third world war. And in addition to that, we're divided, we're fearful. Polarization is a huge problem because we seem to be divided into this clear-cut left wing and right wing, while we need to be united and fight for our rights together.
We are moving to a multipolar world, but we are not yet there yet. We are in a purgatory of polarity. And in this purgatory, more and more countries are filling the spaces of geopolitical divides, doing whatever they want with no accountability.
According to the 2025 Munich Security Report, while the extent to which today's world is already multipolar is debatable, the world's multipolarization is a fact. On the one hand, power is shifting toward a large number of actors who have the ability to influence key global issues. On the other hand, the world is experiencing increasing polarization, both between and within many states, which is hampering joint approaches to global crises and threats. So all of this fills the air with hopelessness, and we need hope. This is why global and domestic turmoils have manifested in digital trends like Hopecore that emerged in 2023 and gained significant momentum in 2024. The Urban Dictionary defines Hopecore as a genre of videos that invoke a feeling of hope, glee, wholeness, and most happy emotions. The A magazine writes, "Our generation has become conditioned to believe that nothing really matters as a defense mechanism. We are the generation that has been forced to deal with the repercussions of those who came before us. Our parents and grandparents could act in destructive ways but did not experience fear because they felt they might not live to see the damage. Whereas we are constantly reminded of our doomed fate. Yes, if you decide to look at all of the odds against us, the odds are not in our favor, but it all depends on your perspective. There's always something to be upset about, but there are also so many things to be excited about. This is why Hopecore has become so popularized on the internet. Isolation and detachment have been coined as a defense for so many young people, when in reality, community and feeling your emotions are the most beautiful parts of being human."
Regardless of format, the overarching spirit of the trend is its message. No matter how dire and pointless things seem, either in your own personal circumstances or the world at large, it is human nature to keep trying for something better. The progress is the point, not necessarily a victorious outcome. Like the indomitable human spirit trend, Hopecore is cheesy and probably won't stick around for that much longer, but actually the underlying message is essential for the moment that we're in right now. Hope is essential for progress. These videos have more power than we give them credit for, because technically not giving in to climatism is Hopecore. Not giving in to the stress and anxiety of living in our world every day is Hopecore. Tapping into the optimism and willpower that both the indomitable human spirit trend and Hopecore content celebrates can be used to motivate people to keep fighting for a better tomorrow, maybe even through community-based movements, which could be so powerful. Because the reality is that we will not be able to get there without optimism and grit, and that is exactly what Hopecore and the indomitable human spirit encapsulates in clips and galleries and videos. I, for one, hope that Hopecore sticks around for a little longer.
I was talking to my close friend a few days ago, and we started reminiscing about how we met. And it was 2020.
Guess what, bitch? Coronavirus! Coronavirus!
And I remember, and she remembers it very clearly, that I had read an article about the right-wing wave coming, and that article kind of predicted the right-wing wave back in 2020, 2021, and also the current wave. So it got me thinking that history really repeats itself, it comes in cycles, and this means that we can probably predict what's coming, or at least make sense of what's happening. So in the hopes of finding this solace, I decided to do some deeper research on history and the cycles and whether we can predict what's going on. And no, I'm not going to base my analysis on TikTok theories, even though sometimes they're quite on point. So yeah, I've been reviewing some literature, real theories, because history is really useful and we tend to forget about it, sometimes accidentally and sometimes on purpose.
In a live stream watched by hundreds of thousands of people, Weidel casually claimed that Adolf Hitler was a socialist and even a communist. And historians were quick to respond, calling it absolute nonsense.
And that reminds me that there's been a growing trend of anti-intellectualism and the criticism of woke ideas. There have been really good videos from some YouTubers that talked about it. But here's basically this idea that knowledge is elitist and critical thinking is dangerous. Some of that is organic. There has always been some criticism around it. That's just human nature. But a lot of it is strategic. Keeping people unaware is the best way to control them. So today I'm going to revisit a few major theories of international relations and historical cycles that might give us some understanding of what's going on. Theory of international relations might sound boring to you, but I'll try to present it in a fun way. But it reminds me how I had to take that exam twice, and at the time I also didn't think it was that important. I didn't understand why I had to study theory when I just wanted to know everything in practice. But taking it twice made it really stick with me, and going through such critical times really makes you value the knowledge that we have. One of the biggest frameworks to understand global power shifts is long cycle theory, developed by George Modelski in the 80s. And the idea is pretty simple. World power shifts in long cycles lasting 70 to 100 years. And at the end of each cycle, global leadership changes, usually through war or crisis. Modelski broke it into 4 phases. The first one is global war, which is a massive conflict that resets the balance of power. Phase 2 is world power phase, which is when the victor becomes the new hegemon. The next phase is delegitimization, when the hegemon weakens over time. And finally, the fourth phase is deconcentration, when other powers rise, leading to instability and another war. And we've seen this pattern for the past 500 years. So for example, in the 1500s, Portugal was the hegemon. Then in the 1600s, the Netherlands took over. From the 1700s to 1800s, Britain ruled twice. And in 1945, until the present time, the US has been the world's hegemon. But here's the thing, if we follow this pattern, the US is at the end of its cycle, because it's been about 80 years since World War II, and now we can see the global powers shifting. The US isn't collapsing, but we can see that its dominance is crumbling. For Trump and many of his supporters, the US created international order constitutes a bad ideal. US foreign policy in the coming years will likely be shaped by Washington's bipolar contest with Beijing. This, however, may well accelerate the multipolarization of the international system. Then we have John Glubb, who studied a lot of civilizations. He studied over 13 civilizations, and guess what? He found a common pattern. Again, the first phase is the phase of conquest and expansion. Then it's followed by the phase of wealth and prosperity, when there's innovation, the economy flourishes, but then it's followed by decadence and decay. It's characterized by corruption and extreme wealth inequality. And finally, the final phase of decline and collapse is followed by apathy, internal division, and rise of authoritarianism. It seems like we're somewhere between stage 3 and 4, where corruption is rampant, authoritarianism is rising, and the wealth is concentrated at the top. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? So at this stage, according to Glubb, societies either collapse entirely or rebuild and renew. And finally, we have Polanyi's Great Transformation, which is my favorite because it's the most applicable to the current situation, the current world state, and it gives me the most hope. So Polanyi argued that unregulated capitalism leads to extreme inequality, which we see it rising nowadays, and then this extreme inequality provokes violent reactions like fascism or socialism. And we saw this play out in the 1920s, 1930s, when economic stability led to the rise of fascist regimes in Europe and authoritarian responses worldwide. Well, now I feel like we're seeing the same patterns. The rise of right-wing populism today, like Trump in the US, AfD in Germany, which we have covered multiple times on this channel already if you want to watch the videos, Modi in India, and so many other countries, France, Austria, the UK, the Netherlands, Russia, Georgia, Hungary. All of it is a reaction to the growing inequality and the failure of neoliberal policies. But of course, because humans are amazing, every extreme shift provokes a counter movement, and the periods of unregulated capitalism are always followed by demands for justice and regulation. And this means that this deep crisis that we're experiencing could be the beginning of a real push towards economic and social reforms. And we're already seeing signs of this, from labor movements to anti-oligarchy protests, from climate activism to rising political engagement of young people. And also all the anti-authoritarian protests in Georgia, in Serbia, in Slovakia. All of this shows that the humanity is fighting back. So we might be on the verge of a positive political transformation. So if history teaches us anything, is that cycles always turn. Every crisis, every empire's decline, every chaotic transition, there's always something new emerging. That's just the universal life-death-life cycle. Shout out to Women Who Run with the Wolves. I love that book. But anyway, yes. Things can feel very overwhelming at times, but we have to remember that hard times are always followed by a new beginning. And we already see so many people fighting back with protests in Germany, Serbia, Georgia, Slovakia, many other places. People are effectively boycotting companies that are doing harm to us. The younger generation is more engaged than ever. And we're also fighting back to take back control over social media. Sure, the world might be at a breaking point, but it means we have a chance to rebuild. History shows that collapse is not inevitable, but change is. And if we understand the cycles, we can push the change in the right direction. So what do you think? Are we doomed to repeat history? Or can we break the cycle? And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching this video, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious. Bye!